So what I'd like to do is start a new Revit project, and I think we're going to draw or at least be inspired by a building in Boston in beautiful Back Bay on Newbury Street called Sansi, which an Endicott student worked on, or at least worked in the firm that did it, Bill Whitlock. So let's take a look at our project and Revit. And at the splash screen in Revit, you'll see that any recently opened documents show up here as little icons. Also families, which we'll learn about. But you can also just start a new project using a template. Now, we haven't made any of our own templates or anything like that. We're just going to use the default one. The architectural template is the one to use when you're working on a kind of the design phases of a project. The construction one is one that is better for construction drawings. So I'll click on that. And it opens up in Floor Plan View. So if I had the project browser open, let me open that up for a second. You can see here, level 1 floor plan is highlighted. So what this tells us is a couple of things. First of all, that there are several levels in the project. And these levels are how Revit organizes three-dimensional objects throughout the project. So for example, you might have a toilet that you put in on level 1. You can also have a toilet in a different location on level 2, and those are two different vertical locations. But a wall, an exterior wall, may go from the level 1 all the way up to a, say, roof level. So there are, anyway, that's how the projects are organized, and it automatically creates these floor plans. So when you're drawing in plan, you are often, that's how you draw most of the basic elements of a project. Doors, walls, windows, columns, floors, even ceilings can be drawn in floor plan view. And the architecture ribbon is kind of where it all happens. So I'm going to just make my way across the ribbon here and show you the basic tools and try to draw at least a building inspired by Sansi. So first of all, on these tools, some of them you'll see they have an icon that represents what they are. You'll also see a little itty bitty down arrow, and that, like a lot of other software that we use, say the Adobe software, they have hidden under there other tools which you can use that are kind of related to the top one. But for now, let's just click on the wall tool. And what you'll see, first of all, up top, the ribbon jumps from the architecture ribbon to this new kind of context-sensitive ribbon that has tools that are handy for what you are trying to do, which is draw a wall. And first of all, up here, a lot of tools have these different options. You can draw using a line, you can draw your object using a rectangle, different shapes, arcs, and you can also pick on objects that are in your drawing to use those to draw new lines. Also noted here, to note here, is down at the bottom, many tools have these kind of parameters that you can set here. For instance, I can change the unconnected height to 15 feet. I could also make my walls connected to some other layer, but let's make them connected to level 2. Okay. What that means is wherever level 2 is, my wall will go up to that point. Okay. And again, if you wanted to draw a half wall or something like that, you could set the height at, say, 4 feet. Now, what kind of wall are you going to draw? Anyway, what you'll see at the top of this is an image of whatever it is that is the currently selected wall family. And if you click on the down arrow, you'll see other families loaded into this project. Now, some of these, for example, the topmost one, has many internal layers that represent construction. So, for example, if you look at this one, and I don't think I can get it to pop up without move my mouse around, but there are different layers. Red probably represents brick. This probably represents plywood. This is probably structure. This is probably more structure. This is some finish element. So there are all sorts of things. We don't need any of that for our purposes. Let's just go with a generic 12-inch. And all you have to do is click on it. You see how now it jumps to the top here. You can also look at some of the parameters here in the Properties menu if you'd prefer to set them there. Okay. Now, finally, after all those options and settings and other things, we can actually draw a wall. And there's a number of ways you can do it, but basically you can just click and start drawing. Okay, and it's easy enough. I'm going to scroll in and out as I'm drawing. See how I'm getting this rubber band line, and I can be zoomed out a million miles away, but I want to zoom in so that I can more or less see the entire plan. If I click and drag my scroll wheel in the middle of that command, it's called a transparent command. You can zoom, you can pan, and all of those will not affect the outcome of the command until you click with your left mouse button again. So anyway, our project is 41 feet wide, I believe. And I can zoom in and you see how it becomes more accurate as I zoom in. Click to complete that top wall. And like most of our drawing programs, you can see that it likes to snap to different dimensions and different angles. See how as I move the mouse, it snaps to vertical. And this is because most buildings are orthogonal. And of course, like most of our drawing programs, you can change the grid if you have something else in mind besides orthogonal. Anyway, let's make this 70 feet long. Okay. And I click again with my left button, and it continues to chain these walls. Now, if you don't want a chain of walls, by the way, there is an option up here. Now it says chai, but it really means chain. You can continue to draw your lines. All right, let me zoom out. Now, AutoCAD has a similar feature that we're going to see here, which is the smart cursor. You see how as I move my mouse left and right, it recognizes the start of that first wall. Again, that's called the smart cursor. And it will give me a tooltip which says intersection and horizontal. So it's 90 degrees orthogonal, and it connects to that end wall. I can just click at that point. Again, very similar to AutoCAD and SketchUp to a certain extent. Finally, it knows that I want to complete the floor plan. I just click to draw it, and note how it heals these walls. They're all joined nice and neatly. Okay, so there we go. We have a 70 feet by 41 foot box. By the way, when you're drawing these walls, you can click them. Let's draw an interior wall. Okay, and I'm going to choose just a 5-inch generic as my wall type. And maybe I will make this an unconnected wall that is only 4 feet tall. Okay? Now, if I come in here, and let's say this is a wall at the front of the building to, screen off a seating area, I can uncheck chain. And now when I draw this wall, it won't want to continue. I can also, by the way, type in a value. So let's say I just type in 12 and enter. It will draw that wall at exactly 12 feet. And this is from, if you remember from AutoCAD days, called direct entry. So, and you can do that with a lot of tools. It will draw in the direction your mouse is, your cursor is set, whatever dimension you type in. All dimensions in Revit are feet unless you type in the little apostrophe to represent feet. Okay, you can also type 12-6 inches, and it will make it 12 feet 6 inches. Okay, there you go. So here is a wall, and let's draw another wall at the back of the room. This one will make it go up to level 2. Now you see how as I start drawing a new wall, it automatically gives me a temporary dimension. These are blue dimensions that indicate its location. So I can just click there, and I'll stop at about 30 feet. Okay. Now, why did I stop at 30 feet? Well, basically just to illustrate this one interesting property. You see how it joins the wall at the intersection. Revit usually is very smart that way and can do those joins. Sometimes it won't work if the walls are different heights, for example. But to make things join, click the Modify tool. This is the leftmost tool on the architecture ribbon. This allows you to select an object. And Revit, like AutoCAD and SketchUp and many other programs, uses grips to allow you to drag things. You know, I can change items. By the way, when you have these grips, temporary dimensions are activated, and you can type numbers into these temporary dimensions. So for example, I can make it 17. I can make this 110. Okay. So these are really handy as you're drawing different things. Anyway, you can also drag the wall up to another wall, and if all goes well, the two will heal together. Really nice feature and makes drawing a lot faster. Okay, no trimming out of lines like you see in AutoCAD. Okay, so there we have it. Some interior walls of different flavors, some exterior walls. Now, let's see, what does this all look like in 3D? Well, Revit provides a standard, it's called the default 3D orthographic view. It looks like a little house at the top of your screen. So I'm just going to click on the little house, and you can see here that it is an axonometric of your project. And what's nice is that this can be navigated like three-dimensional space. You can do it, the simplest way is click and drag the scroll wheel to pan your image. You can also hold down Shift and click and drag your scroll wheel. And this does what's called orbiting. And that's the same terminology, again, that you'll see in SketchUp and AutoCAD 3D. And you can see here pretty clearly that I have a half wall and a full height wall, and everything is happily joined at the top. Okay. Now, 3D views in Revit have other view navigation tools. This little puppy here is called the View Cube, and you can actually click on different parts of the View Cube to kind of pivot your model. You can also click on the names, and because it's an axonometric, this becomes an elevation. Or, from the top view, a floor plan. Or, let's just go underground here, the bottom view becomes a reflected ceiling plan. Okay. Now, it's not a true reflected ceiling plan because there's no ceiling. Reflected ceiling plans are actually oriented the same way as a floor plan. So, that's a little tricky. Now, the other thing that is typical of 3D views is this steering wheel. The steering wheel, I'll just click on that, or navigation wheel, I guess it's called, has a number of tools which we have been using with our scroll wheel. So for example, pan, zoom, okay, and orbit. The other one on the outside, I really like this one. If you've kind of gotten yourself into trouble, you can use this rewind button to go backwards and to any point in the recent past. Okay. Now, there are a few others that are kind of camera controls here. For example, up-down kind of moves the camera up and down without actually changing its location in plan. Look around also keeps the camera in the same location, but it pivots it. So almost like you had a camera on a tripod that wasn't locked. You could move it around. Centers the drawing in the middle of the screen. Sometimes that doesn't work because it finds mysterious hidden things. And then walk kind of allows you, as you click and drag. Oh, walk requires perspective. I didn't even know that. Well, there you go. Walk requires perspective. And it allows you to walk just like in SketchUp. Again, the 3D world, the tools are pretty similar. Anyway, there are some other tools down here which we will learn about later that have different options. To get rid of this annoying steering wheel, just click the box to get rid of it. So now that we have got this model cooking here with gas, let's open up our project browser, and we will start to work with some of the levels that are in the project. Now, by default, Revit has a couple of exterior elevations. I'm just going to go to the south elevation by double-clicking on it here in the project browser. Okay, and what you'll see, it opens up an elevation view. And of course, we don't really have a whole lot going on in this project. It's basically a box what you can do, first of all, you can take these levels, these icons here. This is the bullet that you typically see in an architectural plan with a level. These have parameters that you can change. For example, I can just click on the name and call it street level. And what that will do, that will rename any other views, for example, a reflected ceiling plan, it will rename it to be street level reflected ceiling plan, street level floor plan, etc., etc. So I'll click yes. Okay. You can also change the numerical values. So for example, level 2, I actually think is 15 feet above the first floor. So I'll just change that number and hit enter, and you see how it moves it up. Okay. These are locked together, by the way, so you can move them around. And of course, Revit doesn't know how big your project is going to be when it starts, so you can drag these to be closer or farther away. Typically, interior architects don't really draw a lot of exterior elevations, so the level marks are not usually included on interior elevations. Okay, although Revit has a penchant for keeping them in there. Anyway, I want to make a copy of this level and make a roof level so that I can put a roof on my project and have a second floor. Okay, to do that, first of all, I use my modify tool to select the second level. And there's a couple of ways that you can make a copy, but the easiest way is to, yes, you got it, click the copy button. The copy button is up here on the modify ribbon. And again, anytime you select something, that modify ribbon becomes active. And many of these tools are very similar to AutoCAD and to SketchUp. For example, the move tool, copy, rotate. There are some tools which are a little different. For example, the trim extend to corner button. It's a little similar, but not exactly the same. Offset doesn't always work with different kinds of objects, so you have to be careful. Okay. And then there's this wonderful one called Align, which allows you to get objects aligned with each other. So anyway, those are some of the basic ones. There's also an array. I'm going to select this, click copy, and like other programs, you click once as a base point, and then you move your mouse up, and when you get to 15 feet, you stop and click. You could also type in 15 feet. And you see how the level indicator changes the height. And like we did before, we can call this roof. And I'll leave this one at level 2. So now we have 2 levels. What we want to do is these exterior walls, we want those to connect to that level. Okay, and here, let me go to 3D view so you can see what I mean. These exterior walls want to connect to the third level. I mean, I could just kind of drag them up until they meet that third level. But the easier way to do it, select one of those walls. And I could select multiple walls either by holding down the Control key. For whatever reason, Revit doesn't use Shift. Okay, and I could just clicking on walls until I have them all selected. I could also, by the way, select one of these exterior walls, right-click on it, and from that context menu, I could select all instances in the entire project. Okay, and that's kind of a quick way to, whoops, come back there. That's a quick way to get all of these exterior walls. Now, when you have these walls, it's really a matter of just telling Revit which level you want them to be connected to. Over here in their properties, it says here top constraint. I'll just stretch this out. Top constraint is up to level 2. I just tell it go up to the roof. And you see how all these menus have adapted to the new level that I've created. Okay. So now we can see inside here, and we can see that I have walls which are connected to different levels. This one's connected to the first, and that's connected to the second. All right, so let's go back to our floor plan. And now you can see here in our floor plans, it does have 3 different levels. Let's go to the street level. And let's put a couple of doors in. Okay, I'm going to click on the door tool. And again, a temporary menu pops up. It tells me what kinds of options are available. I'm going to call up the properties menu so that I can see the kind of door that I'm going to put in here. Now, first of all, let's just put in a back door. And this one that shows up is basically the only door. No, there must be some more. There we go. Some other doors are available. You see how within this family, there are a number of different types of family types within this. So this one is 36 by 84. There's some that are 34 or 30 inches wide, different heights. Those are set up when you create those families. Now, let me zoom in on this back wall here. And let's put the door in. And one thing you'll see, as I move my mouse, see how the door flips in different directions? Okay. Revit is trying to guess where do you want that door? I just don't know. It's giving me a distance off the side wall. Okay. And let's go with 3'6". And I'll just click to place the door. And you see how it cuts the opening. Now, let me use my modify tool. Click on the door. And what you'll see are these little flippers. Flip the instance. And what that will do is it will take that door and change the direction. Okay. So let's have it flip outward into the back. That is how you can move doors, how you can place doors and flip them. You can also use the arrow keys to adjust it left or right. For example, I'll just tap it a couple of times and it moves over. And again, temporary dimensions, you can type in numbers and it will move the door in those directions. Okay, so there's a simple door. Now, what you will find is that Revit never quite has the doors that you want, the furniture that you want, the windows that you want. So sometimes when you go and you're in the door tool and you're looking and there's just nothing good in there, also Revit does tend to keep the number of families loaded to a minimum, just because they will slow down your model if you get too many. But it does give you the option to load new families in. When you're in the middle of the door tool, you can just click Load Family. And what that will bring up is the library that Revit has installed on your computer. Now, obviously, we are sadly still on the US Imperial system, not the metric system, which is forever a source of chagrin. But anyway, no matter which system you're on, they're organized basically by what they are. Okay, and this you'll see later on is actually the family type. And I'll just double click on the doors menu. So let's go with go into the residential folder here. I think there's some good ones. Oh yeah, there we go. Exterior double full glass wood clad. Now a lot of these, and I'm just going to click open. A lot of these have different sizes available, so different family types. So the family is double door, exterior double full glass. The family types, it's kind of like this is the Jones and this is Bob and this is Alice and whatever. The different members of that family. Okay, so let's go and choose the biggest one here. I believe 72. So that's 2 3-foot doors, 8 feet tall. Okay, which I believe is the size that they have there at Sunseed. By the way, you can select more than one. You can select more than one by holding down Shift. You can also hold down, I believe, Control to select non-sequential ones. Okay, the more you choose, the longer they take to load. So I'll click OK. And you might say, well, that's exciting. There it is. It's in the top of my menu. And I can just drag my mouse over. And again, like we did before, we can choose some distance off the side wall. Let's choose 6 feet. Okay. And we can obviously flip it if we need to, although this one I believe is in the correct direction. A door for the other side of our project. Let's load another door in. Let me go to doors and see, I like this double glass one. This is this one. Now, they don't have the dimension that I want here. So I'm just going to load one in and we will change it. Okay. So I've loaded in this double glass. And what you can do, if you choose Edit Type, a new menu pops up. And this is the properties of this particular member of the family, 72 inches by 84. Now I'm going to duplicate this guy, and I'm going to make this one 60 inches by 96 inches. Okay. So now what you'll see, there's two family members here. We've just had a baby double glass door, and I can change the dimension right here in the properties. Okay. So instead of it being 6 feet, now it's 5 feet wide and 8 feet tall. And okay. And when I go to place the door, you will see that, lo and behold, it is actually exactly that size. You can see that it's smaller than the one on the other side. Okay. So there we go, and I'll put it 6 feet off the side wall. Now, we have this one door. What if we want to make a couple of copies? Well, Revit, like our other programs, does have an array option. So select the door first, and then on the Modify ribbon, click Array. And it's very straightforward, really. You click a base point for your array, and like with other commands, you can type in a dimension, you can click on the dimension. I just want this to be 5 feet over. Now, with Revit, the array allows you to change the number just by typing in a number. So for example, oh, is that too many, too few? You can type in 5, and it will add them. Okay, very straightforward. When you come back afterwards, what you will see is selecting an individual member of this group allows you to bring back the number and change it. Okay. If you want to, say, make one of these doors different from the others, you will have to go and either edit the group or just ungroup it. And sometimes I'll do that if I have some funky little changes that I want to make. All right, so now we've got a pretty good start on our building here. Just taking a look at the outside. But I believe there are some windows above these windows, transom windows. Now, so far we've been inserting these objects in floor plan, but objects like that want to go above other objects, we're going to want to do that in elevation. So I'm going to scroll down in my project browser to the elevations section, okay, and I'll choose the south elevation just by double-clicking on it, okay. And what you may find, by the way, is that some of these views are already open. If you go up to the top of your screen, and if you have a bigger screen than me, this button will be available. There's this Switch Windows button, and it will show any open views that you've got. Now, here we are in the elevation. And now the trick with Windows, and I'm just going to click the Window button up the top of the screen, is that there aren't really a lot of great windows in Revit. If you look here, there are some double hung, some casements, not a lot of options though. So we're going to want to load a family. And again, like we saw before, there's the Imperial Library. We could look there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Dropbox, okay, and go to this class and see if I can find my window that I've created. This is posted on Canvas. Now, those of you running a Mac, by the way, you might say, well, how did you get that file on your computer? Don't you get Canvas on the Mac side? What I do is sync Dropbox with both my Mac and PC sides. I find that this is easier and more reliable than using something like Parallels. Also, if you use Boot Camp, where the computer totally restarts, this is absolutely necessary because you need to get those files from one side of the computer to the other. If you happen to work on a desktop and you want to get those files to your laptop, again, using Dropbox is very handy. Anyway, I'm just going to browse for my window file, double-click on it, and it will load it in. And what you'll see is that it is now available in the drop-down list. And I can come in and I'll put one right over the window. And it's very easy to place things vertically once they're in elevation view. I can just slide it around. Now, one trick is, first of all, you might want to set the sill height of that window to a particular height. And that's really easy in Revit. I could just kind of drag it around, but you'll see how I don't get a temporary dimension for that. Instead, I'm going to go to the properties, and here it says sill height. I can just type in a number. I'll select that and type in 8'6" and enter. And there you go. It moves it to the right height. It's still not aligned with the door, though. Now, I could nudge it using the arrow keys. Let me see how it moves. But that's not going to be very precise. What I want to do is use the Align tool. And it is a very nice tool indeed. You just click on it, and the way it works is you click on the aligner first, the line or element that you want some other object to move to. In this case, I'm going to click on the middle of the door. Now I can just move over the middle of the window and watch as it jumps sideways and is now perfectly aligned. In fact, I could even lock that alignment so that they can't be moved separately. If I try to move one, see how it moves the other one. So let me just undo that because I don't particularly want to lock it. Undo that one more time. There we go. Now, this guy, of course, is part of an array, so we can just array it right over. And again, this is similar to what we did with the doors. Just click, move it over. This time I'll type in 5 feet. And then I think I want 5 copies, right? Yeah, that works. Okay. Now, if I want just one copy of this window right above the door, I could absolutely go to the window, architecture ribbon, and click window and stick in a new one. I could also select one of the windows that's already there, hold down the control button, which you can't see, but that's what I'm doing, and then you just click and drag, and what you'll see is a copy comes out. And I'll just drag that over to the doors. Right now, I believe it's part of a group, so I'm going to ungroup this little guy. I'm going to use my Align tool to center it on the door. And then I'm going to change the size of it. I believe I have a wider one set up here. That's the right width for the door. So there you go. We have windows on the exterior elevation. We will do the upstairs windows in the next lecture, which will be about 3D information. Now, the last thing we can do on this first floor, well, not the last thing, but one of many things that we can do on this first floor is let's go back to the floor plan, and we're going to put in some furniture. Okay, again, the street level floor plan is the main floor plan. And this is just to indicate some items that are part of the existing conditions that we are going to eventually get rid of for our new fancy designs. Now, the way you do that, again, we go back to our architecture ribbon where all the basic elements are. Click on Component. And what you'll see, let me again open up my Properties menu, see what kind of objects we have available. And we have all sorts of things, most of which are not useful inside a bar. For example, parking spaces and beech trees. Not usually what you'd find in the bar. So we're going to go and load families in. Now, this to me is one thing that Revit doesn't do particularly well. I'm going to go to the furniture section and tables. There's only a couple in here. None are really exactly what I want, but let's just use this one for now. Okay, I'll click open. And what you'll see is the table comes in, and it's like any object that we have seen so far. It becomes an independent element. You can nudge it around. This is, of course, movable furniture. And I'm going to just use that Control, Click, Drag option to make a few copies for our cafe at the front. Okay. Now, what if you have some element in a piece of furniture that is not in the menu and not in the library? Well, we have several online resources. Frankly, there's a lot. Some from Autodesk themselves. I'm going to mention this one that I happen to like. It's called Revit City. And the URL is just like it sounds like, Revit City. And what it has is basically a lot of user-generated content which you can search. So, for example, I'm going to search for wooden bar. Search button. And what it ends up with, these are all free models which you can get. And in fact, all you have to do is click download now. Obviously, you do have to log in, but it is free to log in, and you make up your own login. And all of these objects, it's nice because you don't want to have to draw each of those individually. Creating new geometry in Revit is certainly possible and easy, relatively easy to do, but not as easy as getting it from somewhere else. So I'm going to download this Revit bar here, wooden bar. I'll go back to my Revit model. By the way, to jump from one to the other, one program to another, just hold down the Alt button and hit Tab. If you're on your Mac side, you hold down the Command button and hit Tab. So anyway, where is it? Where is that component? Well, like we did before, click Component, Load Family, and then you'll have to browse for that location. In my case, I believe I put this in the Dropbox folder for this class, and there it is. Now, be aware that sometimes people have some pretty funky names. This one has 16587, kind of ominous, but anyway, that's how it works. And also, when you import models from Revit City, who knows what their provenance is? In this case, it's from an older version of Revit. Now, Revit is a funny program. It is not backwards compatible in that if you have a Revit 2018 file, it will not be openable in Revit 2016. However, I can open this Revit 2014 file in Revit 2018 and it will update it. Okay, good to know, especially if you are working as we are with a lab. You want to have the same version. Anyway, just click to place. And Revit, by the way, has this penchant for putting in more than one object when you import like this. Obviously, you don't need to. You can hit Escape or just click the Modify button. Now, once the object is in, it becomes an object which can be edited in any number of ways. Okay, I'm just going to rotate it around. I can nudge it. Things like align do not always work with imported objects, particularly if they are objects that were originally based in AutoCAD or SketchUp. Those 3D models will function in Revit, but they don't always have full functionality. So there you go. That's how you import objects from outside Revit. So we've really come up with a lovely project here so far. Time to save it. And you can go up here to the handy dandy little save button or Control S. Okay. And obviously Control S is the same in all programs. And you'll want to pick a spot where it's going to make sense. Okay, so like I mentioned, for me, I tend to use my Dropbox folder, but I would absolutely make sure that you have a spot where you're comfortable saving the drawing. And again, you can call it Sansi Existing Conditions if you want, or New Project, or whatever name you think is likely. One thing to notice when you save, by the way, first of all, when you save, make sure that it gets backed up right away, because what you don't want to do is have an hour or two of drawing go by and you've lost everything. But the other thing is, notice these extra files in here. See how it says, the same name as your project, period 0003, 0002, 001. What this is every time you've hit save or Control S, Revit creates an incremental backup. And you might say, why would I ever need that? Well, if you, for example, import an object which causes Revit to crash, you would want to open up a file that does not have that object in it. This allows you to go backwards in time, and you can set how many incremental files you have. It may seem like kind of a memory hog when you're looking at a small hard drive on a laptop, but believe me, in an office setting, these things can save your rear end, especially when you set it to have an automatic save feature every 5 or 10 minutes. So anyway, be sure to never open these directly. Always open the main file, the one that says RVT. If you open one of these backups, it will overwrite the newest version. And for our project, please make sure that if you have any trouble finding some of these instructions difficult to understand, you have several sets of resources. You have me, your esteemed instructor. You have our lovely textbook, the Seidler book on Revit 2018. And then you have peer tutors who basically know everything, so you should go and see them.